For the last talk of this session, we're gonna go to what Insilico Medicine is doing, and we have Aisyah Jamil, who's like an MD, and she's gonna talk about Insilico. And in a way, that's what happens when you throw AI into data of clinical trials. And she will tell you more about that now. Thank you for jumping in quickly as well.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be talking to all of you today. My name is Aisyah. I'm the Business Development Manager at Insilico Medicine for Pharma AI Platform. So Pharma AI Platform consists of three platforms. So we have generative biology, generative chemistry, and lastly, this, which I will talk all about it later today. So Insilico. So Insilico is a transformer-based artificial intelligence software platform designed to predict the clinical trial outcome for phase 2 clinical trials. I'm sure you guys know that 90% of drug development fail during the clinical phase. So that's why for the past 6 years, we try to use artificial intelligence because at Insilico Medicine, we believe that AI is uniquely positioned to solve the complex problem of predicting. So hopefully this will do the trick. So there are three main capabilities for Insilico. The first is that you can get data-driven forecasts of clinical trial outcome. So the sweet spot for this platform right now is phase 2 transition to phase 3. And the second one is that you can explore and analyze clinical landscape for the given disease, therapeutic area. And lastly, you can actually score your trial and run different scenarios. For example, if you want to test different targets against the same disease, you can do that, and then to improve the probability of success. So you can actually see a screenshot because I'm not on my computer, so this is all you can see for the platform right now. And if you want to see later, just find me. We have the booth, and I'm happy to show you the platform live. So you can actually see the meta score. So the meta score is pretty much the probability of success that the platform predicts. And I'm going to talk about the three scores that make up the meta score in a bit. So about the platform architecture, our platform is based on machine learning models based on three modalities. So the first one is trial design score. So this is kind of like a trial design engine, which include features like number of patients, accrual rates, clinical sites, blinding mechanism, and all this helps the engine to predict whether the clinical trial is going to be successful or not. And the second one is the target choice. Now this is the one that I would like to highlight because this is made up of data that we have built since 2016. And this is like this huge biomedical graph, really complex and all interconnected, manually created. I'm going to talk again about the data after this. So the target choice score consists of stuff like clinical data on drug, disease ontology, drug-target interaction. So all you need to do is to give the target or disease as inputs, and then that's all the system needs. And the last one, the last score that makes up the scoring ensemble is the patient eligibility criteria, which include comorbidities and pretreatment. Because sometimes, for example, when a clinical trial enlists someone with high blood pressure and then something goes wrong, so we can actually use all these patient eligibility criteria to see the red flags before the trial commences, which again helps to reduce the clinical trial failure rate. So all these three scores make up the scoring ensemble, which then the final output would be this comprehensive report, like you guys saw just now, the meta score, which is, like I said, the probability of success of the clinical trial. And you can actually see the details down there, like how, because we try to de-black box the platform, so to give more transparency, because it'll give users more confidence to see how does the system actually know that it's 80%, 88% destined to fail. So by having feature impacts on probability, you can actually see all these different breakdowns based on all the features that were as inputs. So data. Since 2016, we have been building, and this data set has been continuously growing. It's a very comprehensive data set with more than 150,000 trials. So when it comes to trials, of course, we use public data like clinicaltrial.gov. But I think at this point, everyone knows there's a lot of garbage inside there too, if you don't mind me saying it. So what we have is a manual curation team. So like these biomedical experts that just fill up the missing gaps. So, we don't just rely on generative AI to like pick up and extract data, because we have someone there to actually curate and make sure that all the data in clinical platform is really good to use. So 150,000 clinical trials with over 41,000 drugs, such as small molecules and biologics, and it also spans more than 22,000 conditions, even disease subtypes even. So we update this platform like once a month now, and we are trying to like continuously improve it. Yeah, if you have any questions after, just ask. So now let's talk about validation. So validation is always the trickiest part when we're trying to talk about forecasting something, especially clinical trials. So how do we validate this platform? So since the beginning, when we had the idea to create Insilico, we know that retrospective validation is not enough, and it's not sufficient to truly validate the platform. So we need to be a little bit more creative in terms of how we validate things. And we need to get into the prospective level of validation done as soon as possible, because that's the only way to truly show that it works. So we started applying something that we call quasi-prospective validation, which I will tell a little bit more about that. So pretty much all the data set and knowledge graphs are timestamped. So whatever data set we download or whatever text we extract, we make sure that we timestamp it. And we know the exact date, and we organize it by date. So because of this so-called time machine model, we can essentially train our models based on specific training data set. Again, I'm not a machine learning expert here, I'm a doctor. So if you have any technical questions, I'm happy to answer to the best of my capabilities, and connect you to one of our application scientists, because this is really fascinating, like the amount of work they do to really validate this platform. So what we did pretty much was that we used training data from the year 1995 up to the end of 2017. And after that, we test the models that were trained with this training data from all clinical trials that read out from 2018 to 2021. And the result was really impressive. So we were able to correctly predict more than 80% of phase 2 to phase 3 transition from 2018 to 2021. So I always get the question, well, isn't this cheating? You train, it's not really cheating, because yes, we know the outcomes of the clinical trials for that, but the system doesn't know it. So this is how we really train the models. Yep. So back to the quasi-prospective validation. In this chart, we're trying to summarize the performance of models in different disease areas or therapeutic areas. So what we discovered was that, as you can see here, the trial design score is scoring really low. It's pretty much because the feature doesn't have enough information compared to target choice score. And then in the end, when we combine those two scores, the meta score actually improved substantially, and the Metascore ROC AUC was 0.9 even. So it actually improves on that. And then now this is another question we always get. What about first-in-class drugs? How can the system predict first-in-class molecules? Because there's no prior existing knowledge from that. So in summary, based on the quasi-prospective validation that we did with first-in-class drugs, the overall performance for the Metascore was 88% for first-in-class trials. But then, the performance, of course, understandably drops to like 72% because, the lack of limited prior knowledge. But in this age, no system actually beat this kind of, precision because of the amount of data that we feed the models. So this is just what we did, the history. So we started in 2016, the idea where we published a bioarchive paper in December 29, 2016. So here we actually, if you guys read it, it's open access, free to read, like pretty much all the paper, full text. So we actually published the first timestamp prediction already on the first paper in 2016. And then we had a successful pilot with a big pharma company in 2019. And then published a few more papers. And I would think that it's interesting to talk about the August 22 paper. So we had like 40 small and mid-cap sized biotech pharma. Because, you know, when it comes to pharma, the future of the company doesn't really depend on like, you know, specific clinical trials. But when it comes to small cap and mid cap pharma companies, the clinical trial outcome can actually, determine the future of the company even. That's why we actually predicted like, the prediction of the prospective validation report, and then great paper, I recommend you to read it. And then we recently published a paper for prediction of clinical trial outcome based on target choice a few months ago. And then that's a very, very technical paper. Really great read, again, full access. I recommend everyone to read it. And then in November 2022, we released Insilico 1.0 as a SaaS platform. So it's available on the cloud. You can access it directly on your browser. So yeah, you don't have to download, you don't have to install anything. And then we just released in June 2023 the latest version of the platform, which I don't think I can show you, but you can like find me later if you want to see it live. The version with like all the new features and releases. Great, now let's talk about this. So for this one, I think I would I would say that 11 out of 14 outcomes were predicted correctly by the clinical trial platform in this prospective validation. And then for the first-in-class factor B here, the last row, the first-in-class factor B inhibitor, CLNP023, in a rare disease known as paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, with no prior info on the clinical relevance, was predicted success. The predicted outcome was success, and the outcome in the end after the readout was also a success. And then for this one, we actually did another prospective validation. And for a 9th month, we found out that the mid-cap and small-cap option-based portfolio time-weighted return, you can see, there's like the Insilico portfolio actually went up by using the platform itself compared to, the other stock options. And here is what I'm talking about, the black boxing, like the impact of clinical trial design features on the forecast. So for example, like you can see here, the trial design score is 0.295, and we actually break it down score by score. And like you can see the first row there, the anticipated enrollment for the clinical trial was 70 patients, and for the system, it deemed that, quite negatively. That's why it made like minus 0.06. And it just breaks down really well, which answers why it's 0.295. So who is this platform for? So mainly it's for pharma companies and also investors. But I would also say researchers can also, see the need to try and play different scenarios if you want to. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions about the Insilico platform?
Really interesting. I was just wondering, you mentioned this deep black boxing with the different scores. And I was just wondering because one of your parameters was blinding. And do you see on average a positive or negative score is blinding? Because I would imagine if it's not blinded, then maybe you have even a higher success, but a false kind of success. So it's like a false positive success because it's not blinded enough.
Are you talking about the blinding mechanism, this one? That one?
Yes, as a parameter in your...
Yeah, so that's just a clinical trial protocol. So, it wouldn't like impact the N metascore significantly, because it's just a small feature that the system calculates as inputs to predict, whether it leans to the left or the right, like you can see here. Yeah, so even though it's called blinding mechanism, but it doesn't has to do with the black boxing part. So that one is just as trying to be transparent with the score, the metascore, and that's why we try to really break it down. And you can actually see in the, I'm going to show you really quick. You can actually see later if there's blinding mechanism in the metascore, the breakdown and how it factors in the final metascore. I hope that answers your question.
Maybe you want to follow up. If you now get a metascore, is there a cutoff, or is there a recommendation, like if the metascore is 0.6 or whatever?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to just show you guys back the platform. So the metascore, again, when it comes to AI, it's just a second opinion. You can't just trust blindly, okay, it's going to fail 100%, because like in the previous study, 11 out of 14 trials were predicted, correctly. So there are still trials that can't be predicted correctly, because I think the clinical trial design itself is so complex and really hard to predict 100%. So this is just a second opinion, Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Okay, 2 questions. First off, do you have a human baseline? Because I think this sort of application has to be in the context of what human performance is. Because if you're not outperforming a human consultant, then the utility of this sort of ML application is, in my opinion anyway, perhaps not quite there yet. Second question, are you continually integrating trial progress data, or is it simply pre-flight?
Okay, so if I understand, you're asking if you're comparing with human, in case the machine have bias, maybe are we talking about bias in this sense?
Are you outperforming a human with it?
We haven't tested it in that sense yet, but interesting point.
Critical benchmark.
Yeah. I will find you, and then I will answer you that in an email, because I think it's an interesting question. Yeah, and then the second question was.
Is it just pre-flight at the moment, or are you continually integrating actual trial data?
No, we continuously integrate updated trial data. So.
Talk about that modality, what the modality of that data is.
In what sense? So there's 3 different modalities here. So right now we only have trial design, target choice, and patient eligibility criteria. And we're gonna obviously add on more modalities as the platform grows.
But that seems like it's just pre-flight. It's just before the trial begins, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
But for in clinical, you can actually predict the clinical trial outcome for past, ongoing, and also future planned trials. That's the thing. So from the past trials, you can actually learn. You can actually do a post-mortem analysis. What went wrong? Why did this trial fail? And you can actually see maybe a common denominator. Why the clinical trial failed. So that's the learnings you get from looking at past clinical trial outcome. When you're looking at the platform. And for ongoing, then you can actually see, is there anything we can do better when we go to the next stage? Because it's such a critical point when the phase 2 clinical trial transitions to phase 3 clinical trial. And then for future, and that's when the researchers can actually see if there's any weakness in the clinical trial design and protocol, and if they can do anything to reduce that probability of failure rate, to reduce the failure rate. Yep.
The definition of clinical trial success, which is fundamental to training the model and testing the model, is it phase 2 to 3 transition, or is it success in the phase 2 trial according to specific criteria?
Phase 2 to phase 3 transition.
Phase 2 to 3 transition. And according to that metric, then what would be the background rate of trial success? If you just look at all the trials, what percentage are successful versus not in your data set?
I'm not sure how to answer that, so I will get back to you once I have that answer. Yeah.
So it's relevant from the perspective that, so my sort of intuitive answer to that question based on some articles that have been written, I can't remember the details, but it's about 70% of trials fail in phase 2.
Is it?
Yeah, so it might be a little more than that. So the question is, you know, when your algorithm is 88% accurate and a predictor that always says no is 70% accurate, how do you kind of measure? I mean, it's hard to get better than that. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but how do you sort of benchmark yourself relative to the baseline, you know, success of a dumb kind of predictor?
I think that's why there's always this ongoing prospective validation work going on. And then, like you see, you know, we timestamp, and then we do like outcome prediction already, and then we follow up ongoing. And then from that, we have like learnings and we apply it. So this is clinical trials outcome prediction is such a complex thing to really perfect. So I would say that this platform is still a work in progress. That's why if you guys want to try it, I highly urge for you to contact me, and it's free of charge. It's just we want to hear the feedback, how your user experience is, and then you can if the interface works, you know, and all that. So yeah, it's a work in progress platform, I might say.
Okay, one more question.
So does this guide users through improving their clinical structure, like the structure of the clinical study?
Did you say, does it guide?
Yeah, so you're saying that it can predict how successful it will be. Based on that, does it provide guidance like to improve it, or is it just a calculation?
It's just a calculation, and then it actually highlights why it said, like, you know, the certain meta score it gives out. So in the platform itself, you can actually score a new trial and then put, like, you know, the different inputs in your, if you're doing a clinical, if you're planning for a clinical trial, you put the different features and inputs, and then you can actually, you know, calculate, and then from that you get a number, and it's like it's pure math, I guess. No suggestion. But we're actually integrating Chat GPT 3.5 into the platform. I know, because we already did it on Panoramic, so you can actually talk to the platform, and it can actually analyze, like, whatever you don't understand mathematically, like me, you can actually just ask, oh, what does this mean? Why does it matter? Why is it significant? So you can actually chat directly to the platform. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you once more.
Yeah.
And one last round of applause.